Hello everyone, welcome back to another premium mixing and mastering course here on MixBuzz TV. In this series, we're gonna break down a cool EDM techno track by an artist called Bernard, and the song is called Warning Contains Cannabis. By popular request, I think the very first in-depth mixing tutorial on techno, EDM, electronic music here. So by now you know how it works. The first part is gonna be free for everyone, and there's gonna be already a lot of good information in there, and the rest of the course is gonna be members only. So if you wanna see the entire course and also access all the other exclusive content and already reach an ever-growing library of in-depth mix and mastering courses, click the join button down here. See all the perks of becoming a MixBuzz TV member, which also gives you mix consultations with me via Skype or email. Let's start this. We're gonna start this one a little bit differently. Of course, we're gonna listen to the final product, so the mastered version of Bernard Warning Contained Cannabis, which is the name of the artist and the song. But while we are listening to the final product, I'm going to do what I usually do for something like this. So I'm gonna recall all my hardware. So while we listen to the final product, you can see all my hardware settings, because of course in the song I used a mix between plugins and hardware. And of course, for members, you're gonna see the settings of every piece of hardware I use, and I'll explain, of course, in detail why I use a certain piece, why those settings. Let's go instrument by instrument. This is the kick drum, how it sounds as is in the mix. And this is without the processing. So let's take a look at what we have. First is the SSL channel. I have a low cut at 19 Hertz and then a 3 dB boost. This is one of my dirty little secrets. I talked about this many times before with the SSL. I have a 3 dB boost at what it looks like 200, but I have the frequency divider engaged. So it's a sub frequency, okay? It's like 30 or even lower. And this really adds a really focused low end to any material. And I like it specifically for electronic music because of this. It's the most focused low end that I can have with a plugin. So this already will give the kick drum a little more muscle. So with and without. We have a little bit of compression, as you can see here, just hitting the first light. After that, we have Pro Q3. As you can see, I'm cutting an FD6 plus dB here at 200, that boxy kind of frequency that helps the kick feeling deeper without actually adding low end. This will change the tone of the kick drum. It's pretty important. Same here, 1.3 dB at 400. And I also wanted to remove that too clicky high end in this kick drum, so I cut almost 2 dB at 5K. Now, one thing to notice, especially if you cut, I have the auto gain compensation added. So it's easier to hear, especially when you cut. You tend to not like when you remove something like 6-7 dB on one range, no matter the range, because you take away a lot of volume, okay? So it's hard to gauge if the cut actually helps. Same for the boost. But I find when you cut a hefty amount of dB on a track is even more important, because it auto balances the level, so you actually hear the same level just with your cuts. This will change the tone of the kick. And remember, these moves are done always in context. So let's bypass this EQ, is probably the most noticeable in the mix. Okay, our kick drum is immediately deeper, more controlled, and it doesn't have that boxy sound in the middle, which also interferes with other tracks. We don't have any automation. We don't have any automation on the kick drum, but we do have a sidechain kick. I'm sending the kick to sidechain other elements that we'll see later in the mix. And I'm also sending it to a parallel kick. This is pretty important because by itself, this one sounds like this. Parallel kick. Okay, so we add a little bit of distortion, of grit and body in the low end. So here we have nothing on the SSL, just open by default. This is our parallel kick channel. I have a Pro G because the kick drum without this was a little too long. And especially because what comes after is the soft tube Zener limiter, which is one of my favorite for distortion saturation, subtle distortion saturation, especially with low-end material. I find this one is extremely, extremely good for that. So let me play you just the parallel. Okay, you see I have the Zener in THD mode, so I'm not using it to compress, I'm using it for the Zener saturation that it has. And without the Pro G, listen to how it sounds. When you distort, when you compress something, even a low-level signal, so the tail of the kick drum, it gets brought up a lot. So sometimes what is the correct length for a dry track could not be, like in this case, if you either compress it hard or saturate it hard. Okay, it's just a little shorter, a little more contained, and it doesn't flab around. Together, they sound like this. That's our kick drum. The next is the snare.